have realized something. It's officially been summer for about 2 weeks now, and I've been wearing the same 3 pieces of clothing all the time. It's not because they're the only ones I like, it's because they're the only ones that fit me. Because I've been thrifting a lot, and most of the clothes I find in thrift stores are too big. I need to do something about that, so I went to the thrift store and I found 2 pieces of fabric that I think I can make some happy summer clothing out of. And I will be making 2 summer tops, one from each of those fabrics, and they will fit me. I will make sure of that. I think we should just get started with the first one. I want to make something like this, and I've got my pattern here that I'll do some changes to. Here I have the front and back piece, and since I want ruffles down here, I will cut these pieces in half about here, which will be my waist, and the upper parts I will cut out in the fabric as they are, but the bottom parts will have to be a lot wider to be able to create the ruffles. Now it's finally time to start cutting in the actual fabric, and I want to try some pattern matching, so I think I'm gonna spend way too much time on this. But if it works out, it will be awesome. And it did take so long, and it was a process of a lot of measuring and comparing the pieces to each other, testing how it will look, and then being like extremely accurate of the placement of the pattern pieces before cutting it out in the fabric. I might have disappeared into a very deep rabbit hole and over-focused on the pattern matching for the last 3 hours. I don't even know where time went, it just disappeared. But it was worth it. It was so worth it.
Just look at this. I seriously have no words. Yeah, it just needs to be absorbed for a bit.
Yeah, I need to eat something. All the edges are locked in now.
The shoulder seams were up first, so here I am pinning them together and then sewing the seam. Then I pinned the sleeves to the armhole. I always start in the middle and then work towards one edge at a time to make sure that they are properly centered. And after the sleeves were sewn in place, I worked the side seam the same way. And then I was tired, so I went to bed.
I'm just doing a try-on before I get started today, and I'm so excited! So next up is the facing, which will go all the way here and create a seamless neckline. And so these flippy flops here, if you've been wondering what they are part of the facing.
This piece will go right here, but I need to sew them right sides together. So I lay these 2 pieces for the facing like this, and then I will sew a seam right here, and I will do the same on the other side. The facing is attached, and to make a neat finish I made sure to cut off the seam allowance right at the corners, and also to cut into the seam allowance in multiple places across the whole curved area so that the fabric is able to lay flat.
My pattern matching is off by like 1/2 centimeter, but I'll fix this. I'll just have to fix this.
This is how it looked. But thankfully I managed to fix this by sewing a new seam that would make up for this, and it worked great. At this point I couldn't get my audio to work anymore. I'm sorry. It'll be back later, but for now I'll hem the sleeves and make the ruffles. I hemmed the sleeves with a 2 centimeter fold on the inside, and afterwards I didn't film it, I'm sorry, but I folded them once more, so 4 centimeters in total. Now only the ruffles were left, so I measured the circumference of the bottom of the body and multiplied it by 2 to get the minimum length of the fabric I needed for the ruffle, which was 210 centimeters. This was all the fabric I had left, so this was going to be a patchwork. I also wanted to avoid this area over here if possible, because you can see how washed out the colors are. So the first thing I did was to cut out this small piece I would use as a template for all the other ones, and then it was just to sit on the floor and enjoy the cutting until I got all my pieces. I locked in all the short edges of the pieces, and I just wanted to show you that I had to mend this hole to be able to use this fabric, and it felt really good. And then I sewed them together to one long piece before locking in the long edges as well, which I'm trying to demonstrate to you here. I hemmed the bottom of this very long piece and the edges too before getting ready to gather it. I changed the stitch length to the longest and the tension quite low before sewing 2 seams next to each other without backstitching. Then I started pulling on the threads of these gathering stitches until the fabric was approximately the size I needed, and then it was time to connect the pieces. I had to lay my pieces flat to make sure that the ruffles were even, which took a lot of time, but when I was happy with it, all that was left was to sew this seam.
The audio's working again, but I have updates for you. First of all, I finished the top, and also you can see that I'm in a completely new space because I'm moving this summer, so this is the new apartment, and currently I'm like living in 2 places. But this place is it's empty, so you can see there is tape on the floor. That's us. We've taped where our couch will go. Today I'm gonna start on a new top using this fabric, and I'm gonna put my inspiration right here. This is a bit more complicated, and yeah, it's gonna take some time. I'm gonna use the same pattern as I did for this one, but make even more changes. I'm just using the pattern for like the construction of the front and back pieces, but then I'm making so many changes. But I think it'll be fun.
Since I cut my pattern pieces in 2 last time, I now had to tape them together, so that's where I started. Then I did some changes to the placket because I wanted it narrower and more like a normal shirt placket.
Okay, so now I have 2 centimeters of placket, 2 centimeters facing, and 1 centimeter seam allowance, so everything outside this line here will be cut off. I think my pattern pieces are done. Well, at least the base of the pattern pieces, because now comes the part I'm the most skeptical about. I'm gonna be using a method called slash and spread, which I've learned from with Wendy here on YouTube. Here I have made a miniature version of how I want this top to look. So I want these folds all the way down to my waist, where I want to allow the fabric to spread out. And I'm gonna just incorporate this pattern in the fabric into this. So I'll use the width of these stripes, which are each 1.5 centimeters wide. So to achieve this, I will have to go to my pattern and then slash, 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 slash every 1.5 centimeters, and then spread those pieces out with 3 centimeters in between them. And then it will be super wide, but when we do these folds, it will go back to this size. And yes, we do need 3 centimeters in between, because it's 1.5 centimeters on top here, but when we open it up, there's 3 centimeters across here. but the amount of fabric I need really worries me because I don't know if I have enough.
I started drawing these red lines onto the back panel, which marked where I would slash my pattern piece, and I did that until it looked like this, but let's skip ahead a bit.
I'm back in the apartment with furniture, and I stayed up way too long last night trying to figure out the back piece and the pattern construction, and I chose the wrong methods. I chose wrong and difficult and slow methods, and I just, yeah, but now I've learned, so hopefully making the front piece will be a lot faster, and I'll show you how I do it on the front piece and not the back piece, because you don't need to see that, but yeah, but it looks crazy now. I need to show you. So here I have half of the back piece. Seriously, only half of it. So the back piece will cover the entire length of this fabric, and I've put out my measuring tape to see, and I seriously have just enough fabric to do this. There is room for the front piece here, and the two front pieces will also cover the entire length of the fabric. They need to be a bit shorter than I planned, like maybe 4 centimeters, but when I do that, there's just enough room for the front piece as well, and the pattern will match.
Here's the front panel, and this is how I did it with the placket, with the first fold 1.5 centimeters away from the placket. I needed extra paper for widening my pattern piece, so I just used this old paper from a notebook and taped them together. Then I started cutting my pattern piece one stripe at a time so that I could find the correct position for it and tape it to the extra paper before adjusting the next stripe. I didn't really need to measure to put these right according to each other since I was following my striped pattern. So here, for example, the last actual pattern piece was on top of this blue stripe, so the next one would have to start from right in the middle of this white square. And I just kept going like that.
Now I'll have to clean up these edges on the top here, like this. So that's it. My pattern piece is done. And it took like 2 hours instead of a whole afternoon, which it did for the back panel. But yeah, lessons have to be learned. I wanted to give you a close-up of how the top of this pattern piece looks, because I know it looks strange. And this is where I spent a lot of my time on the back piece. This line will have to meet the next line there when I fold it, and so on. So that's why all the pieces I've put in between are completely straight, because I'm gonna fold them. So yeah, it looks a bit strange, but it makes sense. Okay, let's go.
The process of cutting in the fabric started with me just sitting on the floor for so long, deciding exactly where I would put the pattern piece for it to make sense with the pattern in the fabric, and also to be the most fabric efficient since I had just enough.
I'm so nervous about this. Well, that was a workout, and my back piece looks like a cape. And now I'm gonna start the long process of making the folds, and then I will press the folds very flat so that they will stay in place, and then do some basting stitches as well, just to make sure. Yeah, I think that's smart.
I finished the basting stitches and I have pinned the pieces together so I could try it, and ta-da! The only thing now is that everywhere I've made these basting stitches, I also have to sew with my sewing machine, so that's gonna take a while. But after that, I'm basically done. I just have to sew these seams and these seams and the ice tapes and placket, and yeah.
Now I will clean up these edges and then I will lock in my shoulder seams with the fake overlock stitch, and then I will sew the shoulder seams of my front and back pieces to sew them together, and then I will go to bed because I'm just tired.
And now I was in the flow, so I decided to lock in all these seams and sew together the side seams as well.
Good morning! It's time for the bias tape, and I've never done a bias tape before, but I guess the internet can teach me.
And the internet did. I started by drawing and cutting out these pieces in this extra fabric I had at home. I took a long one since I didn't want to connect them if I didn't need to, and I pressed it to look like this.
I'm gonna start attaching the bias tape to the neckline, but first I'll clean up these edges again, or not again, but I did it with the shoulders. Because here you can see that like this fabric here that's slanted, that's the actual neckline, while these extra parts of fabric up here, that comes from the folding. So I'll cut these off along the whole neckline so that it becomes smooth and clean, and then I will attach the bias tape.
I have pinned the bias tape to the wrong side, and I will start by sewing a seam here and across the whole neckline.
Okay, this is going to look great. I'm halfway done with my bias tape, but I should totally finish my placket first because can you see this as a finish? Looks so much better than this, which is what I was heading for now, because I still have to fold my placket. I thought this was gonna be the best way, but now I've learned always do the bias tape at the end, but I'll keep it on. I'll just undo the stitches that are specifically on the placket on each side. Yeah.
I went a bit away from the placket I originally drew on my pattern piece and made it even narrower to fit the pattern in the fabric better. So I will fold it like this and sew my seam here so that I sew the placket and the last fold in place at the same time. And I had started pinning when I realized that I need to do the bottom first, so I pinned the placket like this and sewed a seam right here so that when I cut off the corner and flipped it around, it looked beautiful and neat like this. And then I did finish the placket afterwards and also started taking out the basting stitches just right at the neckline to avoid sewing the bias tape over them, which could make it harder to take them out later.
Now I will fold my bias tape like this, give it a good press, and then sew it from the right side this time.
This is how it looked when pinned, and if you're wondering what I'm doing with the bias tape at the edges, this is how I'm folding them. It's quite hard to do with one hand, but yeah, I think it looks good.
I really want to do something easy now, so I'm just gonna hem the bottom.
I've been to work and now I'm back again. And I'm gonna finish this top. I've decided, and I'm just gonna finish it. So first up will be the bias tape around the armholes. But before I do that, I will cut off about 1 centimeter at the top of each shoulder, just to make the shoulders a bit narrower. And then I'm also gonna cut off more fabric to make the armholes round again, because right now they are not because of this fold. Yeah,
yeah, so I'll cut off a bit more of my fabric. I have pinned my bias tape to the wrong side of my armhole, and I've left about 6 centimeters here because the internet told me so. And the purpose is that I will start sewing this seam on the wrong side. That will just connect the bias tape to the armhole, and then when I get to this point I will then sew the 2 ends of the bias tape together, because then I will be able to see the correct length. And after I've done that, I will finish sewing the seam before I flip the bias tape around, and then finish sewing it from the right side. I've only got my buttons left and my buttonholes, because look at it. Ah! And I did find these super cute buttons at home, which I bought at a thrift store. It's got like flowers on them. They're done. Both of them are done, and I'm so excited because I just love how they turned out. And I'm just gonna end this video by showing you the 2 tops. But first I want to tell you about a couple things I did to this one off camera. I attached buttons, and I chose this kind of buttons to make them invisible from the front because I wanted the focus to be on the pattern. And I also did 2 top stitches along the front to keep this fold in place, because it did go a bit like this while I was wearing it, and it didn't look as clean as I wanted it to. But the top stitches fixed it, thankfully. So now it's great. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. I'm slipping away, so don't